Subscribe and tap the bell right now, today, before you go. Twice a day, we bring you the real code of the samurai, not paraphrased, never softened. We've spent the last several videos carefully going through Bushido one single piece at a time, the 8 full core virtues Inazo Nitobe wrote down in 1899, and the real samurai history that actually puts those virtues to the test. Today, we finally pull all of it back together into one single place, because the whole code was never actually meant to be understood one isolated piece at a time. It's a single, interlocking system, and it's genuinely worth seeing the entire shape of it all at once. Rather than recite the 8 virtues in order all over again here, that's already its own dedicated video, complete with Nitobe's actual defining language for each one. It's considerably more useful to name the real tensions the whole code was actually built to manage, because that's the part easiest to miss entirely when you only ever study one virtue in isolation from the rest. The first tension is strength against gentleness. A code that only rewarded correct judgment and brave action, with nothing to balance it, would have produced warriors who were right and merciless in equal measure, which is exactly why Bushido bound its most dangerous, capable men to its gentlest standard of conduct toward anyone without the power to defend themselves, rather than letting strength excuse cruelty. The second tension is private conviction against public consequence. A samurai could believe, internally, that he'd reasoned his way to the correct course of action, but Bushido refused to let that private conviction stand on its own, insisting instead that it be backed by a word reliable enough to need no contract, and a record clean enough that losing it would leave a mark time only ever widened, never healed. The third tension is individual will against sustained obligation to other people. Loyalty asked the samurai to hold a debt he owed to someone else above his own convenience, sometimes for years rather than a single dramatic moment, exactly what the 47 Rōnin proved was genuinely possible across 2 full years of calculated, humiliating patience before a promise that ultimately cost every single one of them their own lives. It's worth pausing here specifically because this is the 20th video on this channel, which means it's a reasonable moment to say plainly what comes next. The 8 virtues aren't a closed set we've now finished with. They're a lens we'll keep applying to new figures, new episodes of samurai history, and new angles on the same handful of primary sources, because a code this demanding rewards repeated examination from different directions far more than it rewards a single pass through, however thorough that pass tries to be. What you've gotten so far is the foundation. What's ahead goes considerably deeper into the specific lives, specific texts, and specific historical moments that this code actually produced. Running alongside all 8 of these virtues is the man who tested nearly every one of them personally, Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated across more than 60 duels, who arrived late and unarmed in any conventional sense to the fight that made him famous, who spent his final days writing 21 precepts for a single trusted student, and who never stopped training even after his reputation was beyond any reasonable challenge. And running alongside him is Hagakure's harder, stranger teaching, that a warrior who has genuinely accepted his own death each morning is the only one capable of acting with total freedom for the rest of the day. What ties all of this together, across 8 virtues, 1 undefeated swordsman, and 1 uncompromising meditation on mortality, is a single underlying demand, that a life be lived deliberately, examined honestly, and held to a standard that doesn't bend just because bending would be easier. Bushido never promised this would be comfortable. Nitobe himself describes a code built by men who staked their entire lives on causes they considered worth more than simply staying alive. What it promised instead was something rarer than comfort, a life you could stand behind completely, in the one account that actually mattered to the men who lived it, their own. That's a harder promise to sell than the usual self-improvement pitch, and it's worth being honest about that difficulty rather than smoothing it over. There's no shortcut version of Bushido that delivers the composure of an undefeated swordsman or the loyalty of 47 men willing to die for a debt, without also demanding the years of unglamorous, unwatched practice that actually produced both. What the code offers instead of a shortcut is a clear, tested map of exactly what the work looks like, drawn not from theory, but from real men who staked their actual lives on whether it held up, and left behind a record of what happened when it did. It's worth being honest about what this recap can and can't do. Hearing all 8 virtues named in sequence, in a few minutes, is not the same thing as actually holding any one of them under real pressure. Nitobe himself would have been the first to say so, given how much of his own account rests on the difference between a virtue merely understood and a virtue genuinely practiced across an entire life. What a summary like this is actually good for is seeing the connections between the pieces that are easy to miss when you only study one virtue at a time, that rectitude has to come before courage means anything, that self-control has to hold underneath all the others, that loyalty without the patience the 47 Rōnin demonstrated is just a word without the 2 years of discipline that made it real. There's also real value in noticing how much of this code has nothing to do with combat at all, despite the swords, the duels, and the armor that dominate the popular image of it. Rectitude is a discipline of decision-making. Politeness is a discipline of attention toward other people. Self-control is a discipline of managing your own reactions before they manage you. Strip away every sword in this entire code, and what's left is still a demanding, coherent system for how to actually live, which is exactly why it's survived this long, adopted by people who will never hold a blade, studied by readers separated from Nitobe's original audience by more than a century and an ocean. This channel exists to keep going through that code in full, one real source and one real historical life at a time, not modern paraphrasing, not borrowed warrior aesthetics stripped of their substance, but the actual discipline that built history's most disciplined warriors, and what it still demands of anyone serious enough to take it on today. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Twice a day, we bring you Bushido straight from the source, the real words of the man who actually wrote the code down, and the real warriors who truly lived it out.